Okay, so here we go. It looks like Liz is first with the hacker's private chat.
Yeah, so how the tables have turned. Usually it's everybody else's info getting leaked, but this time it's the hackers' chats that are getting leaked, which I thought was pretty interesting. Because usually it's the other way around. So this new site called leaksmarket.com, is appropriately named, has dumps from private hacker chats on there. And I'm sure the cops are going to love this. It's going to be real handy for them. And I just thought it was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. I know I've seen a lot of one gang hacking another gang, but just hacking everybody wholesale is somewhat new.
Yeah, so I imagine that a lot of blacklists are going to get updated right now, yeah, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's progress. That's one good thing about criminals is that they're always turning on their own.
Yeah, no honor among thieves.
And I just saw this new Wired article about Marcus Hutchins that's very good. And he talks about how he made this malware for this criminal, and then he got a real job and made like 10 times as much money. And he said, wow, man. I mean, I've heard this a lot. They usually are, it's usually not this gold mine that you think it is to write malware and stuff. Anyway. So now we got to convert something in images.
Yeah. Microsoft and Intel have made this thing where they'll take a file, basically turn it into a picture and analyze that to see if it's malware or it's clean.
So it's using a sort of AI algorithm then?
Yes, it's definitely using AI.
This reminds me of one I saw, which I think might also have been Microsoft, where they said they're going to classify bug reports just from the title and nothing else using AI. So it sounds to me like just a sort of gimmick to use the existing image learning software. But I saw a talk from Dan Kaminsky saying this. He would take like a binary difference between a file before and after an update and then figure out how to make these images to make it easier to spot how much had changed and where the changes were.
It's similar to that. Making 2D images out of programs or files and noting a difference.
So I guess the idea is that there will be some patterns visible in the image that the AI will find.
Right. And then say, hey, that's malware, or hey, there's something here.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. It actually makes some sense. And then deepfakes.
So
about this, because I haven't taken deepfakes very seriously.
Right, and you shouldn't. So when deepfakes first came out a few years ago, people were very concerned about what it would do to the election, because people could make videos of politicians saying whatever they want. So they could have Donald Trump saying, I want all Americans to die. Or they could have Biden saying, I do terrible things to all the people who work under me. And you know, what can you do about that? And researchers looking into this say that's not really going to be an issue. Maybe at the last moment, someone can create a fake video. But the real issue that's going to affect the 2020 election is that if videos do come out, people are going to start questioning whether or not these are real or fake. And that's where the problem comes in, is that you can't really discern true videos being put out, you know, by NPR or the press or some reputable source from a hoax.
Well, the reason why I don't take it seriously, because imagine people making videos that make Trump appear to say something outrageous and stupid. Like, what difference would it make?
No,
it'd be more of an indicator if he suddenly started having these like calm, well-reasoned, logical arguments.
I know.
Right.
Well, he has those when he's reading from the teleprompter. So, I mean, I'm not convinced.
Like I said, the problem with deepfakes aren't the deepfakes themselves. It's the fact that they delegitimize actual videos and actual evidence.
Well, I guess if people believe what they see in videos, yeah, they should get over that. It'd be like believing what you see on the internet.
Yeah, but unfortunately, people do believe it.
Well, no, I mean, people should believe reputable sources that show a video of, say, like Tara Reid, crying or, saying her story. I mean, that's real video. That's a real confession of, what someone had said. But if people are going to start questioning like everything they see, then
I like the second scenario a lot better. I think you can't really trust anything, and you have to look at many sources and assume that like half of them are fake and lying to you. I think that's the only practical plan, and it always has been.
Right. Do your own research.
Yeah, I think
that can't go wrong at all.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I'd say it's the only thing you've ever had. Like if you go to court, people are lying, the lawyers are lying, the criminals are lying, and it's the way life is. If you walk through the jungle, animals are like sneaking up on you.
Yeah.
You have to get used to the fact that deception is just a part of life.
The problem is it's really effective. A lot of people fail to do that. They get all their news from one source and will believe just about anything that's told to them, as long as they think it's a credible source, whether it really is or not.
I mean, but at that point, it's not necessarily our fault. They're the ones who are choosing to stick with one source rather than expand and see other points of view or do more research. And there's a reason why the slowest zebra got eaten by the lion.
Well,
I think that's true, and it's not our fault, but it is our problem.
Like, how can we create an environment where people are skeptical enough that they don't trust everything they see, but not so skeptical that if they see something that disagrees with their worldview, they can just dismiss it by saying, "Oh, that's probably a deep fake," when it isn't.
I think we should trust the evolution that got us here. We got this far by having this form of learning, and it's all that it's ever been. It used to be people would join a religion, they believe all the things. I mean, it's always been the case that people are most accurate about what they can really touch right in front of them, and their idea of what's going on further away gets more and more murky and superstitious and wrong because it doesn't really matter. And so I don't think you can change how people get information or how they evaluate it. I think they have a system of figuring out common sense or something, what they believe and what they figure is all lies.
You have much more faith in common sense than I do, Sam.
Well, common sense has got us this far. It's gotten us from living in caves to having all this technology and stuff. That's how it works. And I think anybody that thinks they have the system to find the truth and everybody else should just follow it is just making the same old mistake.
We can agree on that, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, so this, oh good, I didn't remember if I got to put this one in. This is Marcus Hutchins, which is bloody awesome. I mean, he's the guy that found the WannaCry kill switch, and they have a really nice article here, which helps me a lot. I mean, I used to be, when I used to be seeing this as very black and white, and I think this is the way it really is. He talks about how he was a kid and school was nonsense, and he's finally got a computer and he spent all his time hacking, and then he started going to forums and learning to hack criminal stuff, and then he started writing ranch Trojans, but he was moral and he wouldn't put like banking credential stealers in it, and then a criminal wanted him to do that, and then the criminal found out his real address to like send him a computer or some drugs or something, so now he said, I'll leak that information to the FBI unless you write the more dangerous malware. And he talks about how he just got sucked in deeper and deeper to where he knew he was going to get caught, and then he got caught. It's very interesting. And at the same time as he was doing this dangerous crime that was eventually going to get him in trouble, he was also doing all sorts of beneficial stuff, writing an informative blog, analyzing malware and stuff. And so it's just not at all as simple as good guys and bad guys.
Right.
Everybody has a mixture of both of them. So I think this is very helpful because I deal with a lot of these people. I come across them in the hacker community, and I've often been part of convincing them, to like knock it off and get a real job. And although that doesn't seem to be an issue in the last 3 or 4 years, I think anybody that wants a job in security has got one now. Anyway, I highly recommend that one. It's like Darknet Diaries, which is a podcast full of these. It's very interesting to find out the truth about how people end up being in cybercrime. Anyway, so now we got another evasion tactic.
Yeah, so this is pretty interesting, actually. The the malware is getting more and more sophisticated as far as evasion systems goes. And this one is unique in that it is being updated more aggressively and frequently than malware researchers have really seen in the past, which I think is pretty interesting. That kind of goes back to something we've talked about in the past, which is like malware as a service, for example. And this is, once you start peeling the layers of the onion, it's pretty interesting to see all the things they're doing to obfuscate the typical, malware signatures that you'd search for, or that a defense program would search for. And it's quite the combination of different layers of obfuscation that they're using. So I thought this was pretty interesting.
Do you people know what JScript is? That's not JavaScript, right? It's something else?
It isn't JavaScript?
I just assumed that it was, but you may be, no, it's not. It's
Something different, okay.
It's a Microsoft proprietary thing.
I was wondering, it sounds kind of like VB script.
It's a JavaScript lookalike, which Microsoft called JScript.
Oh, yeah. What a good idea. So there's some new language.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not their main, that's not just the main, or not the only way that they're doing it. So I just there are layers and layers of different evasion tactics here, which I thought was pretty interesting. As far as information exfiltration goes, and it's another thing I thought was interesting about this is that they're getting more and more sophisticated as to making things that are just going to blend right into your systems. Like, if you see a SQLite file, you're just going to assume that it belongs there, but it totally doesn't.
Yep. That's always been it. Just living off the land using normal tools. And now I see there's malware detection tools and something called import rec. I got to check that out. A malware detection tool I've not heard of. There's a couple of gems in there.
Yeah, this is a good article.
Good. And Thunderbolt 3, this is hitting all the press.
Right. Anything made between, 2011 and 2011 to 2020 is vulnerable.
Yep, if it has Thunderbolt 3.
Right, if it has any of the Thunderbolts, 1, 2, or 3.
Ah.
So what can this attack do?
So this attack can get to the hard drive and get the data out. The system doesn't have to be booted. It basically just blows through everything.
Well, it can all your data, even if your hard drive is encrypted, I think.
Yes, according to this, yes.
So you connect a device over Thunderbolt, and then it can read what's going on inside the computer, including like the hard drive?
Yes, even if it's asleep or turned off.
Ooh, yes. Sam, we need to try this.
I know. It sounds awesome. And yes, I would think it's awesome just for police. If you want to do a forensic image of something, it apparently blasts right through the encryption.
Right.
Which is...
doesn't the computer have to be on to blast through the encryption, though?
Well, that's what I wondered. And the articles, I haven't been entirely clear about this. You can disable Thunderbolt security. The point is there is some security feature, but it's apparently implemented in RAM and it just bypasses it.
Right.
So this is kind of like the old hacking tools that would let you log into other people's accounts because they just changed the authentication system in RAM during boot up. So yeah, you steal data from encrypted drives and reading and writing. That implies that the whole disk encryption is putting the key somewhere unwise, like in RAM where you can reach it.
Or what it sounds more like is that somehow the drivers are letting you grab data off the hard drive, which would be encrypted to the operating system during runtime. But I can't imagine any way that if computer's turned off, you can plug in a Thunderbolt device and then have it read an encrypted hard drive, because
apparently that's exactly what you can do. But like I say, we really have to try this, obviously.
I am highly skeptical, but let's try it.
I know the whole point of all our security was to prevent this. So it sounds, yeah, absolutely. We need to get
I thought this was this. I'd seen this article about it, and I thought that it was pretty. I thought that it was pretty interesting.
Well, I know, and I actually this Mac here is from a couple years ago. I guess I should be vulnerable.
Right, and same with my laptop. It's 2000.
So do I just have to make a USB stick, or what do I have to do it?
So wait, so there is a suspend to RAM. So
yeah,
okay, that's what it's doing.
Check out the article I just dropped in the chat.
Okay.
It explains it a little bit more.
Good, because I saw this, but I didn't pay enough attention to the details. Now I'm getting more troubled. Okay, so all right.
How it usually goes.
Full mitigation is don't use suspend. What is suspend to RAM? Okay, so your machine is asleep.
Yeah. Well, but it's still on in the sense that it's, you know.
So if you turn it all the way off, then they can't get the hard drive anymore, presumably.
I would assume not. I mean, I can't
No,
imagine.
if you're using Boot Camp, like, which I have in the past, I'm not right now, but if you're using Boot Camp, it sounds like they can still get you, because somehow, see, I thought the hard drive was just encrypted. Like, I thought that was sort of a binary yes or no thing. But it sounds like that you can access the hard drive unencrypted before, while Boot Camp is doing its thing. So I'm not really, I don't really get how that works. I guess maybe Boot Camp somehow stores the keys or something.
Well, I think it has to. The key is stored in the TPM or whatever Apple uses instead of a TPM. That's my understanding. Now I know on an iPhone, there are 2 or 3 different encryption keys used at different stages in boot up. That's why they're very secure, much more secure than computers. And so even if you had this attack like Checkra on the iPhone, it only gets you to the system files because all your personal data is behind another layer of encryption that really requires your PIN. So anything that compromises the boot up procedure does not get to your personal data. But there's nothing like that, I think, on desktop drive encryption. It's not as complicated.
This supposedly it's at the chip level. They can't.
It's not software. You can't fix it with software.
Yeah. So anyway, anyway, that sounds pretty awesome. Totally have to try this, see how it works. Anyway, all right. So let me just make a note about this one to add. I'm going to put it here. All right. So anyway, let's see. That was Thunder Spy. Now we're down to double extortion. All right. What's this? I got an idea.
Right. So this is the top ways that systems are being attacked right now. Of course, right now, hackers are going wild with everyone changing their habits, working from home, VPNing in, increasing the size of the playground, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so what we're seeing today are techniques that not only extract data, but also ransomware. So what attackers do is they extort the data and then they ransomware it. So not only do you have to pay to get the data unencrypted, but then you have to pay them extra money not to leak your data.
Yep.
Which is, okay, that's kind of weird.
I was hearing this for a while, like when, about a few years ago when Uber got ransomware, mm-hmm. They said, oh, you don't have to report it as a breach because they don't get the data. They just hide it from you. But the last year or so, I've been hearing that's not true. They're also stealing it.
Right. They're also stealing. The way people are getting in right now is through RDP.
Yep.
Configuration failures, phishing, as well as known vulnerabilities, mm-hmm. doing standard lateral movements. And then the most common way persistence is handled right now is user creation, scheduled tasks, GPO changes, registry changes, and of course, shadow IT. Yep. And then there's a list below of the common ransomwares out right now, including Clop, Snatch, and a few other ones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this article sort of goes through all the stuff that's going on right now. What was interesting was the recruitment. So, and we were mentioning, how these kids get kind of sucked up into these groups and they kind of get,
mm-hmm.
bullied into making malware.
Yeah.
That's totally going on still. And that's a big part of criminal hacking.
I think it's not just hacking. I think this is also how people get in gangs and selling drugs and stuff. You just make a bad friend and then they get you to go a little further and a little further until you're in too deep.
And that's why I've made the case for years now that we need to be teaching kids about this in high school at least, because it's much better that they learn about it, just like drugs and sex. It's just much better that they learn about it in an ethical context from responsible people before finding out about it.
Well, yeah, and the ethical issues are just complicated, just like drugs and sex. There's not like one simple answer at
Right.
all. And you might as well get them used to coping with the endless ethical ambiguity.
Right. Because it's like, and the other thing is, we've essentially been doing the equivalent of abstinence-only education on this stuff, and we see how well that works.
Yeah. Well, I was surprised how little pushback I really got when I started teaching hacking in college. There were only a few people that said it was terrible. I wasn't the first guy to do it, but I was one of the early ones. But I was surprised how few people accused me of fostering crime. It only came up very rarely. And so actually, I'm glad you talked about that one, because I got a series here about the kill chain, and I've been learning the kill chain, or the attack framework is the modern way. So I thought a couple articles about ransomware, and I said, well, ransomware is pretty dull, but this is a lot less dull than I thought. The surprising thing I saw in this Sophos report is they tell you to not pay the ransom. Now, everyone I know has said, you have to pay the ransom. It's the only thing to do. But what they say is, when you pay the ransom, the total cost is higher. Because even if you pay the ransom, now you get to decrypt it. Now you still have to go through the restoration process, which is just the same restoration process you would have had to go through if you had restored from backup. And that's where the real cost is. Restoring from backup is super expensive, tracking down where it all is, putting it all down. And the key to ransomware apparently doesn't really spare you that. So that's very interesting, because the other thing they say is, like 95% of the time when you pay the ransom, they do give you the key, because it's a growing business model and they're doing fine. And I thought everybody was saving money by paying the ransom, but this article says they aren't. And that's very interesting if that's true. But of course, their insurance company is paying the ransom. Anyway, that part I thought was very interesting in this one. And this one I thought was very interesting technically. They're talking about how to fix these problems by improving technology. And they're saying some stuff I've really wanted to hear for years, which is, first thing, get rid of NTLM. NTLM is one of Microsoft's old hashing techniques. And they say
Still around.
Yeah, and NTLM v2 is the network version, but even that is really old and vulnerable. They say you should just replace it with Kerberos, but Kerberos is vulnerable. So now they are planning to update Kerberos. This is an exciting move forward, like the move to fix the Internet Protocol, Border Gateway Protocol, BGP. There's a movement to actually tie down BGP, and there's a movement to improve Kerberos and separate these golden ticket and silver ticket attacks. And this is basically the end result of Mimikatz. For like 15 years, this New Zealand hacker has been making this Mimikatz tool that blows up Active Directory over and over and over by blowing Kerberos to hell. And he has finally managed to create enough humiliation that they're finally talking about upgrading Kerberos, which is really old. So anyway, I'd like to learn more about the cryptographic details of this, but it really sounds like real progress, finally, coming some better techniques for lateral movement. And I got very interested in blue team stuff, and I finally went back to the attack framework that I've bounced off a few times. And the thing here is, I'm finally beginning to understand it. So these are they see as the 12 steps of coming in. This is the upgrade to the Lockheed Martin kill chain, which had about 7 steps. And that's what our hacking textbooks and the Certified Ethical Hacker certification is based on, is the Lockheed Martin kill chain. And now this is designed on to understand advanced persistent threat attacks. And they have 12 steps, although not every attack does all steps. But you have access, execution, persistence, privilege escalation, defense evasion, credential access, all the way down to command and control and impact. And then they have hundreds of exact techniques that are used for these things. And these are very interesting. And they explain what malware, what advanced persistent group used them, what targets they work on, what defenses stop them. And so I made a bunch of flashcard type things where people can memorize all this stuff for my classes. And I think this has got to be in the CISSP certification. And all tools are beginning to align themselves by this framework. So you'll take this grid, and if you're selling a product of some kind, you will color it in green, 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 green. My product covers these 10 things. And this other product covers those 10 things. And you try to see how many of them you can cover, like a bingo card, to plan your defense. So anyway, all these reports, like the one that Kaitlyn just had of what steps they used and what tools they use, are fitting into this framework. So I'm watching videos about it and trying to see how this is used. But I think this is going to be really big. And it may help organize the blue team. This is the big problem in security from the beginning, is lack of security metrics. We can't say you're up to a 5, but if you spend more money, you'll go up to a 6, and that'll save you this much money. And this, I think, is a real promising step in that direction, to turn this sort of art into a science. Anyway, so I recommend learning it. I'm going to be teaching it in all my classes and trying to build tools and plan around it. There are
let me know what stuff you come up with, because I've been trying to find ways to get that embedded.
Yeah.
Courses, and I found a few tools on GitHub that supposedly helped you out, and even one that claimed you could build an environment.
Yeah.
A virtual environment around it. And
yeah, I saw that, and I couldn't quite figure out how to do it. Like, there's something called the Red Team Framework or something.
Yeah.
And that thing is not an automatic tool. It's just a list of commands to use to simulate each of these attacks.
Right.
But then I found a Splunk environment that claims they built that into it, and there's something beyond it. Some kind of automated pen testing framework that will automatically hit these things. So I really like to see how that works and get it going. I think that's kind of what happens at CCDC. Remember one of the regional CCDCs, they said there was only one red teamer for all 25 teams, and this guy was just running an automated tool. Like, there's a Metasploit, used to be a Metasploit tool that would just throw everything at you. And he was just running that. And there is some newer version of that tied to this attack framework that sends you like everything on the board.
Yeah, that, I think building an infrastructure around that would be great for our students to, because you see that chart, and for a lot of people, that's overwhelming.
That's what I thought.
Right.
But I just looked at it a week or so ago. I said, well, actually, it's not that bad. It's not that different than our TCP/IP protocols or anything else where you have to just memorize a pile of stuff. And I said, you really should know all these techniques if you're going to be in this business.
Yeah.
All those things are happening.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of learn it like the alphabet or something, where you have to memorize a bunch of junk, but if you don't have that, you can't really make progress. And so I'm planning to see how far I can take this. I'd like to have a whole series of projects where you really get good at using that thing. It's the right language to talk in. Anyway, that's I'm seeing it everywhere now that I finally understand it. Every article, every malware analysis article is more or less following the steps in that thing. So It's fundamental to our business. Anyway, so then we got IT jobs slashed. Well, just like everything, right?
Right. But this one could have some pretty good consequences, because it goes on to talk about too how a lot of companies have also cut their security departments, which is kind of insane right now, because I'd read an article last week that it was like over 50% of companies have been hacked since the coronavirus epidemic started, and probably that number's growing as time goes by. But it's really not the time to be cutting your security budget, but it's gonna continue to happen. So.
Well, I can understand it, because security is always seen as a cost center, and it's just like the college is probably going to have huge cuts again because the state is in the red, and education is the only thing they can cut. They can't really cut the fire and the police, so education is where they have to cut, and that's why
the problem here is being penny wise and pound foolish, and making the cuts in the wrong places. Just like where what the school should do is cut any administrators we don't need for compliance reasons. They're not going to do that. They're going to cut classes and
administrators are not going to cut the administrators.
Exactly. It's just not going to happen.
The Congress and the Senate decided to respond to this not by bailing out the people, but by bailing out the huge companies who donate money back to them. It's political corruption in both cases, but it's very hard to get around it.
Right. And with security, a lot of companies were already under resourced in terms of their IT security, and those companies are going, their security posture is probably going to go from bad to worse because of this.
Well, it will mean more jobs for our gang in the future. As
Yes.
they have to hire more security people to clean up the mess. So there's a
Yes.
good side, sort of. Anyway, so then we got ATMs. Well, did they hack the ATMs?
Company that makes ATMs was hit.
Diebold, yeah. They also make voting machines.
Yeah, they got hit with some ransomware.
Mhm.
It's just one
They
of
did
those.
they did not get the ATMs. Okay. All right.
Yeah, they did not get the ATMs. They got their corporate business.
Yep. And did they tell you what they got?
They don't really say what they got.
Prolock. Okay, that's a new one.
Well, it's actually rename.
Pwned locker.
Yeah.
Okay. And
But
they
it's
have a
the same
tool.
that decrypts that can break the other.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, like you're saying, everybody's going to get hacked.
It's just a matter of when.
Yep. And you got a stalker, apparently.
Right, we do have stalkers. So there's a lot of talk about contact tracing being a key to
Oh, yeah.
stopping the pandemic.
Oh, this was his contract tracing. Oh, that's really rude.
Yeah. So in Australia, when you go to restaurants, or into public places, you put down where you were, your contact information, so that the authorities, if there's ever if they ever suspect that someone has the coronavirus, they can go and try to find you, and they can contact you and be like, hey, you were at this place where this other person was. And so what happened is this woman went into a restaurant, she got some food, and then the server used the contact tracing info to try to hit on her by sending her Facebook requests and sending her texts and everything. And that is really rude. And it really goes to show you the problem that this contact tracing has, that if the information gets into the wrong hands, or we're not doing what we can to protect the private information of people who are being traced, then it can lead to situations like this of harassment or misuse of the information.
I think they're doing this in the U.S. now. I think I just saw an article. It said they opened a restaurant, but they make them keep a log of everybody who went there.
Yeah, and they should, but there needs to be controls over who can read that information.
Well, yeah, but of course there won't be. I mean, restaurants just have some clipboard at the entrance. What do you think they're going to have? I mean, they've got it. They're focused on serving food. They're not like technology experts.
Yeah, I know, but they should have some way to prevent this.
Well, I guess so.
Maybe guidelines from the federal government, if we could trust them right now to do anything.
I think probably just employee education, like Subway fired the people that did this. I mean, this is kind of, I think, the insider threat. Like there were hospitals where people would look up the medical records of celebrities, and there's cops looking up the record of their girlfriends.
Right. And you know what we're doing now? We're trying to add controls.
Yeah.
To things like that to make sure that doesn't happen. And that's something that needs to happen with contact tracing. I don't know if it's going to, but it's something that should definitely be encouraged, and hopefully it'll happen.
I think you need to have administrative controls. It's the same thing with Uber, right? Every Uber driver knows where you live now, so they could mess with you, and you just have to like have administrative controls, I think, are the logical ones.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. And then this one was an interesting Twitter thread from someone who does, Sarah Jane Lewis, who does mobile device security, and she's been looking at the tracking apps, which are all over the place. And she pointed out something that I thought was pretty interesting: unintentional remote resource loading. Now, you could make an app that just sends a call to one server to get the information, and it could be a custom protocol or something, but that's of course not what people do. They take standard libraries and bolt them together. So in fact, every app is pretty much just a web browser. And that means almost every app will take content written in HTML, including and execute it. So, and it takes data from many sources. So all you have to do, and she says she finds it in almost every app, is there is some way, there's some resource it loads from an untrusted place. So you can inject HTML, and all you have to do is inject an image tag, and then it will send its IP address back to a malicious server, and so you'll find out who they are. So all apps that claim they're anonymizing who you are lying. It is trivial to use this attack to find out who you are anywhere. And so I thought it was very interesting. And it makes a whole lot of sense.
I'm thinking a lot of apps download advertisements.
Right.
And I'm thinking it would be really fun to try to hijack one of those advertisements and see just how much HTML and JavaScript and stuff you can throw in someone's app while they grab that advertisement.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you can frequently execute script from the advertisement and stuff like that. And that's been an old trick. So yeah, I think it's very interesting to hear about and not too hard to understand. So I like that one. Anyway, a lot of good stuff. You folks have any more comments about them?
No.
No.
All right, I'll stop the recording.